The assembly room blazed with candlelight, casting dancing shadows across the polished floor. Charlotte Winters pressed herself against the wall, desperately wishing she could disappear into the floral wallpaper. "There he is," whispered Amelia Pemberton, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "The beast of Blackwood Hall." Charlotte followed her gaze to the far corner where a man stood alone, his back to the room. Even from behind, he cut an imposing figure, broad shoulders, dark coat, posture rigid as iron. "They say he hasn't attended a social function in 3 years," another girl, Sophie Hartwell, added breathlessly. "Not since the accident." "What accident?" Charlotte asked, curiosity overcoming her usual reserve. The girls exchanged meaningful glances. "No one speaks of it directly," Amelia said, lowering her voice. "But rumor has it his face was terribly scarred in a fire. That's why he always stands in shadows." "How dreadful," Charlotte murmured, genuine sympathy blooming in her chest. "Dreadful for him, perhaps," Amelia's smile turned wicked. "But fortunate for us. I have a proposal, Charlotte. A wager, if you will." Charlotte's stomach sank. Nothing good ever came from Amelia's proposals. "You've been in Bath for 2 weeks now, and you've yet to prove you're anything more than a timid country mouse. So here's your chance, approach that man and engage him in conversation for at least 5 minutes. Do that, and I'll sponsor your entrance to Lady Ashford's exclusive card party next week." "That's cruel," Charlotte protested. "If he's been through something terrible." "Then you'll be doing him a kindness," Amelia interrupted smoothly. "Treating him like a normal person instead of a curiosity. Unless you're too frightened." The challenge hung in the air. Charlotte had come to Bath at her sister's urging, to come out of her shell after years of caring for their ailing mother. She'd promised herself she would try, would push past her natural reticence. But this felt wrong. "What if I refuse? Then everyone will know you're exactly what you appear to be, a coward from the countryside with no place in proper society." Amelia's words were honey-coated venom. Charlotte's hands clenched at her sides. She thought of her sister's encouraging words, her own promises to embrace this new chapter of her life. And she thought of that solitary figure, standing alone because people whispered about him rather than to him. Perhaps Amelia was right about one thing, treating him with normal courtesy might indeed be a kindness. "Very well," she heard herself say. "But this is the last wager I accept from you." Amelia's laughter followed her as Charlotte crossed the room, each step feeling like walking through deep water. The closer she got, the more details emerged, the quality of his coat, the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his head tilted as if listening to the music while refusing to look at the dancers. When she was close enough to speak, she cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me, sir. I wonder if you might help me with something." He went perfectly still. For a long moment, he didn't respond, and Charlotte wondered if he would simply ignore her. Then, slowly, he turned. Charlotte's breath caught, not from horror but from surprise. Yes, there were scars. A burn mark traced from his left temple down to his jaw, puckering the skin. But his eyes were what struck her, deep grey, intelligent, and currently filled with suspicion. "What could you possibly need my help with?" His voice was rough, as if unused to speaking. "I'm afraid I'm terribly out of place here," Charlotte said, the truth making her words easier. "This is my first season in Bath, and I don't know anyone. I thought perhaps another person standing alone might understand what that feels like." Something flickered in those grey eyes. "You're alone by choice. I'm alone by design. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Both result in the same isolation. And both are cured by simply walking away from me." He started to turn back. "That seems rather presumptuous," Charlotte said before she could stop herself. "Deciding what I should do without asking what I want." He paused, then turned back fully, studying her with new intensity. "What's your name?" "Charlotte Winters." And yours? You don't know. Genuine surprise colored his tone. Should I? For the first time, something that might have been amusement touched his scarred features. Most people in this room could tell you my name, my title, my entire history, and at least 17 variations of how I acquired these scars. I'm not most people. And I'd rather hear the truth from you than gossip from them. He regarded her for a long moment, then something in his posture shifted. Not exactly relaxing, but the aggressive defensiveness eased slightly. Marcus Thornbury. Viscount Blackwood. And I got these scars pulling my younger sister from a burning carriage 3 years ago. The simple honesty of it struck Charlotte like a physical blow. Is she? She survived. Unmarked, thank God. Though she still has nightmares. And you have scars. We all have scars, Miss Winters. Some are simply more visible than others. The word settled between them, heavy with meaning. Charlotte found herself truly looking at him, not at the scars, but at the man. The set of his jaw, the intelligence in his eyes, the way he held himself as if braced against attack. Why do you come to these events if you find them so unpleasant? She asked. My mother insists. She believes if I hide away completely, I'll never recover what I lost. His mouth twisted. She doesn't understand that what I lost can't be recovered by forcing myself to stand in rooms full of people who pity or fear me. What did you lose? The question seemed to surprise him. The ability to move through the world without being seen as a tragedy or a horror. I see neither, Charlotte said quietly. I see a man who saved his sister's life. That takes remarkable courage. Or remarkable stupidity. Perhaps they're the same thing sometimes. That earned her an actual smile, brief but genuine. It transformed his face, softening the harsh lines and making him look years younger. How long must you stand here talking to me before your friends release you from whatever dare they've concocted? Heat flooded Charlotte's cheeks. You knew. Miss Winters, I've been the subject of wagers, dares, and pranks since the accident. I recognize the pattern. He studied her mortified expression. Though I confess, you're the first to actually maintain a conversation rather than shrieking and running away. I'm so sorry. This was unconscionable. I should never have. Why did you agree to it? The direct question stopped her mid-apology. They said if I didn't, I was a coward. And I've spent so many years being afraid of everything. I thought perhaps this time I could be brave. By approaching the monster in the corner. By approaching another human being with courtesy. She met his eyes steadily. Though I realize now that accepting their dare made it worse, not better. I'm truly sorry, Lord Blackwood. He was quiet for a moment, then surprised her again. Would you like to walk in the gardens? The moon is full, and it's stifling in here. You want to continue this conversation? You've spoken to me longer than anyone has in 3 years without treating me like a charity case or a curiosity. I find I'm not quite ready for it to end. He offered his arm, a formal gesture that somehow felt intimate. Besides, leaving together will thoroughly scandalize those who sent you over here. Seems like fair punishment, don't you think? Charlotte laughed despite herself, a real laugh that drew attention from across the room. She saw Amelia's shocked expression, Sophie's dropped jaw. I think that sounds perfect, she said, taking his arm. The garden was indeed beautiful, silver moonlight painting everything in shades of grey and shadow. They walked in silence for several minutes, Charlotte intensely aware of the solid warmth of his arm beneath her hand. Why Bath? He asked eventually. You said this is your first season. My mother passed away 6 months ago. My sister insisted I needed a change of scenery, a chance to live instead of merely existing. Charlotte swallowed against the familiar tightness in her throat. I'm not certain I know how anymore. To live? To be anything other than a caretaker. For 5 years, my life was medicine schedules and sickroom vigils. Now I'm supposed to attend parties and make clever conversation, and I haven't the faintest idea how to do any of it. And yet you're managing reasonably well this evening. Am I? I accepted a cruel wager and approached a stranger under false pretenses. You also showed kindness when you didn't have to, asked questions that suggested genuine interest, and you're the first person in 3 years to look at my face without flinching. He stopped walking, turning to face her. I'd say that qualifies as managing well. You're being generous. I'm being honest. There's a difference. He studied her in the moonlight. Your 5 minutes expired long ago, Miss Winters. You're free to return and claim your victory. Is that what you want? What I want, he said slowly, is irrelevant to most of society. But not to me. What do you want, Lord Blackwood? The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and Charlotte felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the low neckline of her gown. I want to know if your sister was right, he finally said. If a change of scenery can help someone learn to live again instead of merely existing. Have you found the answer? I'm beginning to think I might. His voice dropped lower. Would you permit me to call on you tomorrow, Miss Winters? Properly, not as part of a wager or dare. Just as myself, calling on you. Charlotte's heart hammered against her ribs. I would like that very much. Even though society will have opinions about a scarred recluse pursuing the acquaintance of a respectable young woman. Society, Charlotte said with more conviction than she felt, can form whatever opinions it wishes. They rarely align with reality anyway. That earned her another smile, this one lasting longer. You're quite remarkable, Miss Winters. I'm really not. I'm terribly ordinary. Then ordinary is far more interesting than I'd been led to believe. They walked back slowly, neither eager to end the evening. At the garden entrance, Marcus paused. Thank you, he said quietly. For treating me like a person instead of a curiosity. For staying beyond your required 5 minutes. For being honest about the wager even when you could have hidden it. Thank you for giving me a chance to be brave in the way that actually matters, with honesty instead of bravado. Tomorrow then. Tomorrow. Charlotte returned to find Amelia and Sophie waiting with identical expressions of shock. What did he say to you? Amelia demanded. You were gone nearly half an hour. We discussed literature and gardening, Charlotte lied smoothly. He's quite well read. But his face is his own business, not ours. Charlotte's voice held an edge she didn't know she possessed. And I'll thank you not to make wagers involving other people's tragedies. It's beneath you, Amelia. Or at least, it should be. She walked away before Amelia could respond, feeling lighter than she had in months. Perhaps learning to live again wasn't about attending the right parties or making the right connections. Perhaps it was about finding someone else trying to do the same thing and choosing to be brave together. The next morning brought flowers, a simple bouquet of white roses with a card in bold, clear handwriting, for the bravest ordinary person I've met. Until this afternoon. M.T. Charlotte's sister, Penelope, read the card over her shoulder and squealed with delight. Who is M.T.? Tell me everything. There's nothing to tell yet, Charlotte protested, but she was smiling. Yet, Penelope pounced on the word. But there will be. Oh Charlotte, you're glowing. I haven't seen you look this alive in years. It's one call, Pen. Don't plan the wedding. I'm not planning anything. But I am profoundly glad you went to that assembly last night. Penelope squeezed her hand. You deserve happiness, Charlotte. You've spent so long caring for everyone else. Let someone care for you. Marcus arrived precisely at 3 o'clock, dressed impeccably and carrying a book. You mentioned an interest in botany, he said after the proper greetings. I thought you might enjoy this. It's an illustrated guide to English gardens. Rather beautiful, actually. Charlotte accepted it with genuine delight, flipping through pages of detailed drawings. This is wonderful. Thank you. I have a confession, Marcus said once they were settled in the drawing room, Penelope acting as a pleasantly distant chaperone. I asked around about you this morning. Did you? What did you discover? That you nursed your mother through a long illness with remarkable devotion. That you're considered quiet but kind. That you've turned down 3 proposals because you didn't wish to leave your mother. He met her eyes. That you're far braver than you give yourself credit for. Caring for someone you love isn't bravery. It's simply what one does. And facing a ballroom full of strangers when you'd rather be anywhere else? Approaching someone you've been told to fear? Staying when you could have run. You make it sound heroic. It was just necessary. Perhaps that's what bravery is. Doing what's necessary even when you're frightened. They talked for an hour, then 2. Marcus told her about his sister, Emma, who was 16 and still recovering emotionally from the accident. Charlotte shared stories of her mother, the good days and the difficult ones. They discovered a shared love of reading, though their tastes differed enough to make for interesting debate. You actually enjoy those sensational novels? Marcus asked, mock horror in his tone. They're entertaining. Not everything must be serious philosophy. But the writing is often atrocious. But the plots are thrilling. Sometimes I want to escape into adventure rather than contemplate the meaning of existence. Fair point. He grinned. Though I reserve the right to mock your literary choices. And I reserve the right to call your preferred reading pretentious and dull. His laugh was warm and genuine. I think we'll get along well, Miss Winters. When he finally took his leave, Charlotte felt as though the afternoon had lasted 5 minutes instead of 3 hours. He's absolutely smitten, Penelope announced the moment the door closed. And so are you. It's been one call, Pen. Yes, and you've been smiling for 3 straight hours. I'm counting that as progress. Over the following weeks, Marcus became a regular visitor. They walked in the parks, attended concerts, drove out to see the countryside. Each meeting revealed new layers, his dry humor, her unexpected wit, his protectiveness of his sister, her practical approach to problems. They also faced the inevitable gossip. The Beast and the Beauty, one particularly cruel wag dubbed them, thinking himself clever. Marcus tensed when he heard it, but Charlotte simply laughed. That's inaccurate on both counts, she said loudly enough to be heard. Neither of us is a beast, and I'm certainly no beauty. We're simply 2 people who enjoy each other's company. Perhaps that's too ordinary a concept for those who prefer drama. The gossip didn't stop, but it shifted. People began watching them with curiosity rather than mockery, noting how Marcus smiled more, how Charlotte glowed with confidence. The crisis came 6 weeks into their courtship. Emma, Marcus's sister, arrived in Bath for a visit and immediately took against Charlotte. You're the woman everyone's talking about, she said during their first meeting, her tone accusing. The one who approached Marcus on a dare. Emma, Marcus said warningly. It's all right, Charlotte interrupted gently. She's right to be protective. Yes, I approached your brother because of a dare. It was wrong of me, and I apologized. But I stayed because I wanted to, because I found him interesting and kind. Everyone says you're trying to trap him into marriage. Emma. No, let her speak. Charlotte turned to the young girl. You've lost enough, Miss Thornbury. I imagine the thought of losing your brother to someone who might not have his best interests at heart is terrifying. Emma's eyes widened, clearly not expecting understanding. I can't prove my intentions, Charlotte continued. I can only show them over time. But I promise you this, I would never trap anyone into anything. If your brother chooses to pursue this courtship, it's because he wants to, not because he's been forced. She's right, Marcus said quietly. Emma, I know you're worried. But Charlotte has been nothing but honest with me from the beginning, even when that honesty was uncomfortable. I trust her." Emma studied Charlotte for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If you hurt him, I'll never forgive you." "That's fair," Charlotte agreed. "I wouldn't forgive me either." The afternoon was awkward, but by the end, Emma had thawed slightly. As Marcus walked Charlotte home that evening, he took her hand. "Thank you for being patient with her. She loves you. That's not something to apologize for." Still, she was quite rude. "She's 16 and frightened." "I remember being both." Charlotte squeezed his hand. "Give her time." "You're extraordinary," Marcus said suddenly. "Do you know that? The way you handled her, the way you handle everything, with grace and kindness and honest emotion. You make me want to be better. You're already wonderful. I'm a scarred recluse who hides from society. You're a man who saved his sister and is learning to live again. Those scars are proof of love, Marcus. Never forget that." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. They were alone on the quiet street, evening shadows deepening around them. "Charlotte," he said softly, "these past weeks have been the happiest I've had in years. You've made me remember what it feels like to want things, to hope for things. I know it's fast, I know society will have opinions, but I need you to know, this isn't casual for me. This isn't a passing fancy." Her heart thundered in her chest. "It isn't casual for me either." "Then may I court you?" "Properly, officially." "With the intention of," he swallowed, "with the intention of marriage, if you'll have me." "Yes," Charlotte breathed. "Yes, absolutely yes." His smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that felt like a promise. "I should warn you," he said, still holding her hand. "I'm not an easy man. I have dark days when the nightmares return. I'm impatient and occasionally arrogant. I have a title but modest means, and society still views me as damaged goods. And I should warn you," Charlotte countered, "that I'm stubborn and sometimes too blunt. I don't know how to be a viscountess. I prefer books to balls and would rather walk in gardens than attend routs. I have no fortune and no connections. Then we're both ordinary people trying to figure out how to be extraordinary together. I think we might already be." The engagement announcement caused exactly the scandal they expected. Some celebrated the romance of it, the reclusive viscount finding love. Others declared Charlotte a scheming opportunist. Most simply gossiped endlessly about every detail. But Charlotte found she didn't care. She had Marcus, who looked at her like she hung the moon. She had Emma, who gradually came to accept and even like her. She had Penelope, who cried happy tears at the wedding plans. 3 months after that fateful assembly, Charlotte stood in the garden at Blackwood Hall, Marcus's family estate, wearing a simple wedding gown and feeling more herself than she ever had. "Having second thoughts?" Marcus asked, coming up behind her. "Never." "You?" "Not for a moment." He wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Though I keep waiting for you to realize you could do better. There is no better. There's only us, figuring it out together." She turned in his embrace. "That's all I ever wanted, Marcus. Not a perfect life, but an honest one. With someone brave enough to be real with me. Then I'll spend every day being as real as I know how." He kissed her forehead. "Thank you for accepting that dare, Charlotte. Thank you for staying. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for giving me a reason to be brave." The wedding was small, intimate, perfect. Emma served as bridesmaid and actually smiled. Penelope wept throughout the entire ceremony. And when Charlotte and Marcus exchanged their vows, speaking promises of honesty and partnership and choosing each other every day, Charlotte felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of a life without challenges, they would face plenty. But the peace of knowing she'd found someone to face them with. Someone who saw her completely and loved her anyway. Someone she could be ordinary with, and find that ordinary was exactly extraordinary enough. As they walked back up the aisle as husband and wife, Charlotte caught Amelia's eye in the crowd. The other woman looked stunned, perhaps finally understanding that the dare she'd issued had led not to humiliation, but to happiness. Charlotte smiled at her, genuine, without rancour, and then turned her attention back to Marcus. To her future. To the life they would build together, one honest moment at a time. Later, at the wedding breakfast, Emma pulled Charlotte aside. "I was wrong about you," the girl said quietly. "You're good for him. You make him happy. He makes me happy too. Promise me you'll take care of him." "I promise." "And you promise to visit often?" "I could use a sister." Emma's face lit up. "Really? Really? We ordinary people need to stick together." "You're not ordinary," Emma protested. "You're the person who saved my brother." "No, sweetling. He saved himself. I just reminded him he was worth saving." As evening fell and the celebrations continued, Charlotte found herself on the terrace with Marcus, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. "Happy?" he asked softly. "Deliriously. Even though everyone is still talking about how we met." "Let them talk. They gave us a good story, at least." She leaned into his side. "The dare that changed everything." "Indeed." He kissed her temple. "Though I prefer to think of it as the moment I learned that bravery comes in unexpected forms. Like a frightened young woman choosing kindness over cruelty. Or a scarred viscount giving that woman a chance to prove herself. We were both brave, then. We were both desperate for connection. We just found it in each other." They stood together as the sky darkened and stars began to emerge, two ordinary people who'd found something extraordinary in their honest, imperfect, absolutely perfect love. And somewhere in Bath, at another assembly, another dare was likely being issued, another story beginning. Charlotte sent up a silent prayer that whoever accepted that challenge would find even half the happiness she'd found. Because sometimes, the worst decisions lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes, accepting a dare changes everything. And sometimes, approaching the one person everyone else avoids leads you exactly where you were meant to be.